I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to call to order the workshop for Bullhead City School Board on Monday, December 9th, 2004 at 5:30 p.m. And we have some special people here. Would you like to introduce the group?
We're going to do roll call.
Roll
first.
call.
Oh, roll call. Well, they're here. All right. President Melinda Stabrowski.
Charlene Diaz here.
Fred Rushton here.
Barbara Zarzicki here.
Okay. Would you like, please introduce them?
All right. So today, well, first of all, my name is Miss Wilson, I'm principal at Desert Valley School. Today, our fourth graders are going to be performing jingle bells for you. Miss Edge has been working diligently with the fourth graders for the past few months. They have a holiday show next week for our fourth grade students and parents, and so we're super excited. So she's here to showcase some students from Miss Suttle's class and Mr. DeLeland's class and all of the things that they've been working on. So we hope that you enjoy.
So all of these people here are parents? Nice of you to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank everybody else, indeed, for showing up.
Edge for all of our hard work, and obviously the students, they put in a lot of effort to learn how to play bells and just in music class, so we're always really excited to showcase all parts of our school, including music.
Thank you for being here.
Looking forward to this.
I bet you they do better on bells than you do.
I know they do. Wonderful. Thank you, Miss Edge.
Thank you, fourth graders.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, parents.
Thank you for bringing the kids. That was wonderful.
And you're certainly welcome to stay. You don't have to leave just because they're done, but that's up to you, okay?
But thank you. Oh, that was good. Now, if I could have only have done that well on
I was
Sunday.
going to say, bills are not easy to play.
No, they're not.
Thank you, Miss Wilsey.
Miss Wilsey.
I lost track after the
Thank you.
first four measures yesterday at church.
Okay.
I was just kind of lost. I didn't know what bell to ring or where I was.
Oh, gee.
It was like,
Thanks,
I
Ethan.
ruined it for everybody, but it was just like, so I am impressed. I am impressed.
Did a really good job.
That was awesome.
Their fourth grade performance is next Wednesday, if you want to come see them.
A
What
week
time
from
is it?
Wednesday?
Next Wednesday,
Next
a
Wednesday,
week from this week, yeah.
at what time?
5:30. I'll double check.
And it's on the community calendar at the end of the year.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll share the weekend.
that'll be fun.
They let
That'll be fun. I think I'll try that.
5 or 6 songs.
Good.
Look at all of them taking pictures. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, item 1.4, pressures on the general fund due to school funding.
I don't know why my microphone won't move, but there we go. Okay, so in November, when we had an ASA superintendent's meeting, and we have those every couple of months. I didn't go in person, I did it virtually, but one of the superintendents in the state, Dr. Annabelle Aportella, put together this information, and at the time I thought, oh, I'm sure the board would like to see this. Because it talks about how funding is done in Arizona, but it's also giving us information about public school funding, charter school funding, and ESAs, and how that all plays together. So I thought that she did this in such a way that it's pretty accessible, which makes it really nice for those of us who are not necessarily on top of all of this stuff. So here's her report for K-12 total revenues for fiscal year 23. So keep in mind that's 2 years ago. Okay, so here in the left-hand column, you can see how funding works for districts like ours. Okay, so the blue on the bottom is the funding from the state. The orange is the primary tax rate. Now keep in mind that these are averages, so it might be a little different from school district to school district. So I'll give you an example. On the left in that first column, school districts like Scottsdale that get no state funding. So where it's red, where it's orange and blue, it would be entirely orange. There are 3 school districts in the state that do not get state funding at all. They don't get any equalization funding. They fund their schools completely with property tax money from their, in their county or in their school district, okay? But most of us, the rest of us, 230 some school districts get some kind of state funding. So this is the average, okay? And then the light orange is so the blue line shows for most of us, okay? So for us, it would be the blue and the orange. That's it. For some districts that have secondary or bonds or overrides or other local money, they get that light orange. And then there are federal dollars. Now, we do get federal dollars because we have title funding. We've had ESSER funding recently, whatever. So any of the federal dollars. So for us, it would be something like the dark blue, the orange, and the green. Okay? And this was for fiscal year 2023. So you can see how it is that sometimes they say in Arizona that districts have between $14,000 and $15,000 funding for each student. Okay? And the blue part, adding the blue and the orange makes it about 8,000. I will tell you that's not us. But it gives you an idea of how the state funding and the county funding and the other funding streams work for public school districts. The second column is charter schools. So charter schools draw no funding from the county, from property tax. All of their funding, the blue part, all of their funding comes from the state. So that means from the state budget that's approved by the legislature each year, okay? And then in some cases, they get some local or county money. Okay, I don't know how that's determined. I'm not sure that Annabelle told us that. She may have, and I didn't put it in my notes. And then they can apply also for Title I and some of those funds as well. So, so you can see that funding. Okay, then you can see the ESAs. So in fiscal year 23, the ESAs, they were drawing all their funding from the state, from that state budget, and you can see it was below the blue line. So it was about $9,500, a little over $9,500. And for fiscal year 24, for which they did, she could get data, that went up to $9,782. And this is per student, okay, per student. So for all 4 columns, we're talking about the amount of funding, and this is averages, but for each student, okay? So we've talked in the past about what can happen and what can be beneficial for those districts that have bonds and overrides. And so when you look at this average of $2,400 for those districts per student that they can get because they've passed bonds and overrides, you can see that can make a significant difference in the funding available in a school district. And clearly Arizonans support public education. 78% of the bonds and overrides that were on the ballot in November did pass. Okay? So there's strong support in Arizona for public schools. And that's a good thing. We want that. We want that for any school district. Okay?
It's interesting, though, that adding up the R column, the district column, we get about $9,600. And then
Yeah, it's-
98 and
yeah.
97. Not quite right. But that's okay. Keep going.
Well, and the thing is, that's part of what we have to look at here, because what you're going to see is then what happens when, for instance, when we lose students to a charter, or charters lose students to us, or any of us lose students to the ESAs. And that's part of the point of this. But keep in mind that all of that blue, when that all adds up in the state budget, the Constitution limits the percentage of the annual state budget that can be spent on education.
Oh,
Okay? So if you think about my examples of the jars of marbles, okay? So even the legislature, each year when it approves a budget, only a certain percentage of those marbles in the jar can go to education. And they can't go over that, or they have to change some other things, okay? So the core state responsibility for equalization formula. So these are examples of schools. So on the left, you have District A, which has low wealth. And in this case, the blue still indicates the state dollars that come out of the state budget, and orange indicates property tax, county property tax, okay? And then you have a medium wealth, a district of medium wealth, and then you have a district of high wealth, and then you have those three districts that are not represented here, where that entire amount of money, 100%, is blue, because, is orange, sorry. For those three districts, it's orange, because they fund their schools, those three school districts, completely with property taxes. We are kind of between, on these examples, we're kind of between District A and District B. Okay, we're kind of in there. We're not at 50-50, but we get a little more money, so I'm going to give you kind of round numbers. In our $18 million budget, about $10 million comes from the state and about $8 million from the county, roughly, okay? And then you can see over on the right, charter schools are entirely funded with state monies and get an additional amount of money. So they get the 100% that the rest of us get with the combination of state money and local tax money, and another 20%. Okay? So, any questions or comments about that?
Just because I don't know, why do charter schools get that extra 20%?
I don't know the reason. I just know that's the way it was built into the legislation that authorizes charter schools. Okay?
Kind of goes against the equality that the government strives to force down our throats, right?
Thanks, Fred. That's a good conclusion, or the equity, if you would.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of the state equalization, and I will tell you most states have equalization because they recognize that they have districts that, particularly rural districts, that don't have the property tax funding. And so, 40 or 50 years ago, most states recognized, wait a minute, if we want quality education in all of our districts, in all of our schools, we better figure out a way to make sure that there's pretty equal funding per student in all of our schools. And so I think virtually every state has some kind of an equalization formula to make that happen.
So do those three schools who don't use this funding source, who use just property taxes, do they have the same rules we have?
Yes, absolutely the same rules we have. Charters, not so much.
Yeah.
not so much. There are some things that, that they don't have to do, but pretty much they match the public schools, pretty much. There are enough differences that some of us whine, me included sometimes, that it would be nice if not only were there equity in funding, but equity in expectations and accountability. Okay, so it's, you know, it's like okay, let's play football, but this group is going to play by these rules, and it's kind of like a Venn diagram. You know, here's the rule. Here are the rules for public schools. Here are the rules for charter schools, and so there's a lot of overlap, but then there are some differences out there, and you kind of go, can we get these lined up? Can we just get them lined up?
I'm just thinking about Scottsdale that doesn't have any state funds.
Right.
Are they still dictated to by the state?
Absolutely, they have all the same regulations
Even
we
if-
have.
Even if they don't get state funding?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
I just was curious.
Okay, so so this gets a little more complicated, but we're talking here about non-special education. We're talking about regular classrooms, and the funding. And keep in mind that on these other graphs, okay, so even on here, this includes high schools. So now you're going to see, because I'm sure you're saying, wait a minute, Stuart, you told us our basic funding per student was about a little over $5,000. Well, okay, so this will explain to you why. So you can see here that the base amount for elementary for us, it says 5805. I will tell you that when I calculated our adjusted budget, it was about 5,015. So again, there's an average here. But you can see that high school base rate is over 6,000. So that's why on that first graph, it looks like there's more per student than what we actually get for our district. Okay. Okay. And then there's additional district additional assistance, DAA, which is capital, and we get funded at roughly $550 per student, and high school's at $685. And I will tell you that because we were really good this year about salary raises and those kinds of things, what we get this year for DAA is in fact our capital, and that's less than last year. And you'll see that, you can see that when you look at the budget revision that that is now posted and that we're going to approve hopefully on Thursday. That you can see that our capital amount for this year is down simply because we're using all but about $20,000 is from the DAA. Okay, district transportation is the same. There's an equal amount there for elementary and high school, and then there's the capital or the charter additional assistance. For capital things at $2,090 for elementaries and $2,435 for high schools. So that's that additional 20%. Okay, so then base formula of total for the district, rows 1 through 3. So you can see it's 6598. That's the average for elementaries, and then for charters 7,895. And then you can see what the ESA formula is, and what the legislature approved was 90% of what they fund charters. Okay. Okay, now, just like public schools, charters don't have to have transportation. And of course, ESAs don't have to have transportation. So if they choose not
Do they still get the
to.
transportation? If they don't have it, do they still get that?
No, they wouldn't get that 243, okay? So you can see, though, the disequity of, particularly in line 5 and line 7 for the ESAs. And here's the other thing. The ESAs, any student who's receiving an education in Arizona through an ESA, there are no rules.
Yeah. So
They don't have to do state testing. They don't have to use state curriculum or state standards. There are no rules, and there is very little accountability. So If you've noticed in some of the news releases last year, there have been some things like, oh, we purchased, we bought ski tickets, or we bought a baby grand piano, or, I mean, those are some of the more outlandish ones. We heard recently that 3 individuals who don't even live in Arizona established ESA accounts for a number of students. For some reason, 12 students comes to mind, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. And collected the money. The adults don't live in Arizona.
They have no
They
children. They're
enrolled,
big children.
they have no children. They enrolled children in Arizona ESAs and received the money. Now, the good news is they got caught.
Yeah.
And the state will take them to court to get the funding back. But think about how much money that really was that went off to people that weren't, have no kids in Arizona or Arizona schools, never, okay?
So there really are no rules for even applying.
Not much, not much.
And the
Charlene?
fact that, it's 3 that they caught, how many more are out there that they haven't caught yet? too?
Exactly. Charlene, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I just want for clarification. that
Sure.
When you're saying ESA, you're talking about the homeschooling?
Yeah.
It's not just homeschooling. It is the ESA is the Empowerment Scholarship Fund.
Okay.
So parents who've had their children in private schools forever can apply and get the money for ESAs. And in fact, of the 70+ thousand students who had ESAs this past year, about 58,000 of them have never been in public schools. Never. They've never been enrolled in public schools. So their parents could afford to pay for the private schools, and now they are getting paid for having their students in private schools. And there's still no accountability for those students. Okay, the intent was originally to make sure there are opportunities for students who have maybe special needs, and keep in mind, these dollars don't even have to do with special ed. These are just general ed students. But the original intent was to make sure that students who had disabilities, if their own school district could not provide the education for them that they needed, that there would be a way for them to go someplace and have those opportunities. Or for students who were in low-performing school districts, to be able to go to a school, either a charter school or a private school or whatever, that would have the opportunities for them to get equal opportunity, some equity in their education. Okay, so there's I see some disconnect between the intent and the way it's functioning. And I think a lot of people see that,
So
that disconnect.
Does this money have to be spent within the year, like ours?
Yes.
So that means if somebody got the 7,000, or 78, whatever, for ESA, 7,100.
Well,
would have to
it's
spend
supposed
it.
to be.
I was going to say, I don't think.
It's supposed to be, but I'm not sure that, in fact, we've heard stories. Now, these are rumors, so be careful here. But we've heard stories that some of those folks who have been paying tuition for all of the years that their kids have never been in public school are socking those funds away for, or what they're doing is they're using their ESAs to pay for their students to go to private schools and socking away what they would have been spending to send their kids to college. Okay? We hear that.
I wonder if that's
It
true.
sounds plausible to me that that's happening. Can I prove it? No, and I'm not sure anybody can, but but that's one of the things that can be done with the funding. Okay. Okay. Well, here's the thing that I really wanted you to have a chance to look at about the additional cost to the state. And oh, by the way, the funding, this is all for kids who are non-SPED. So any student who has special needs, there is a weighting, WEIGHTING, weighting for them that they get more money. And so I think the highest is like 35,000. per student per year. That would be a very, very high needs student. So, the range goes up significantly from the 7,000 to, a much higher amount. Okay, so this is fiscal year 25. So any school choice away from a school district, meaning a public school district, is an additional cost to the state fund, state general fund. So if a student moves from a district school like ours to a charter, so let's say we lost 3 students this year to one of the local charters. In terms of state funding, that is costing for elementary an additional almost $1,300 to the state budget. Okay?
Per student.
Okay, so I'm going to flip to the next one, and then, nope, not that one, this one, and then come back. So if you think about each of these columns as being 100% of the money available, okay, then when you think about this, okay, so the money available each year is whatever the legislature decides. That's 100%. All right. When a student moves from a district school, from a public school district to a charter, that balance changes by $1,300, roughly $1,300, because the 100% doesn't change. It's there, okay? And at the high school, it's about $1,500. Okay. If a student moves from a district to an ESA, so ADE is including teacher experience index in this, it costs the state about $507. Okay. If a student moves from a no state aid district to a charter, so that's Scottsdale, Cave Creek, and Prescott, look at the cost to the state budget per student per year. $7,895 in elementary and almost $8,800 in high school.
So
Okay,
if-
because
if-
keep in mind that ESA is 100% from state budget. And the student, if the student was in one of those 3 school districts where it was being paid for by the county, by county taxes,
And the whole
then the
shebang, yeah.
whole cost goes to the state, okay? To the state budget. And so that means for every one of those students, the amount of money available to other schools, either charters or public schools, goes down. Because that 100% is still 100%. Okay? If a student goes from a no state aid district to an ESA, it's slightly less, but it's still pretty significant. If a student goes from a charter to an ESA, the state actually saves some money. Okay, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's the truth. If a student goes from private or homeschool to ESA, it's that same $7,105. Because prior to ESAs, parents who homeschooled their children received no funding. Okay? No funding at all. Okay. So when we look at the K-12 revenues, this really is the same as that first graph. Thanks, Cass. Okay. Okay. This shows you how much the budgets have gone up from 2004 to 2000, actually to the current fiscal year. And you can see that the current fiscal year total is less than the previous
last year.
fiscal year. Okay, so the
And
once
this is all based on that, whatever the Constitution or the legal
yes,
says of the percentage of the budget.
yeah, and we're going to see on the next slide where you where you level that out and see that 100% and how the 100%, whatever each year's 100% amounts to, how that breaks out. But in this case, you're actually seeing the actual dollars. So 9,000 million, what, $9 billion? That doesn't sound right. But you can see that still the blue is the general fund, so that's the state money. The light blue, what is SETR? right now I can't remember what SETR is.
Well, it looks like it's kind of
It's pretty
evaporated.
small. It's pretty small.
Yeah.
And and it's disappeared, actually. Doesn't exist in the last 3 years. Then we have the turquoise, which is education sales. I'm not even sure what that is. Okay? And then permanent state aid is the purple. I think that is classroom site fund. Okay? So that's sales tax. And then the QTR is the county, the county thing. Okay? Okay, so now when you consider every year at 100%, whatever the total dollars were for that year, here's how they break down. So as an average for the current fiscal year, the state is funding 65.87%. Okay? The county is county on average funds 64%. And then you can see those the other things. The purple stays about the same because sales tax has been pretty healthy in Arizona for the last few years. You can also see that it was pretty slim in those years after the bubble burst, the real estate bubble burst. Okay? State equalization tax rate. Oh, that's the rate.
And it's sunsetted in 22.
Oh, yes, and it's sunsetted in 22. Okay, thanks, Lance. I should have looked that up.
Well, that's why it disappeared.
That's why it disappeared. It sunsetted. It was one of those timed things that the legislature passed and said it can.
Looks
You
like
can
it
do
was
this for-
passed right after the upheaval.
Yeah. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
and then sunsetted. Okay, so this one shows you now what's happened with, how this has changed with ESAs. So down at the bottom, you can see, so now 8% of the total school funding budget, 8.2% now is going to ESAs. So look what that has done to the blue, the dark blue. Okay?
So charter schools are even feeling a pinch, aren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now, once again, as a personal and as a professional stance, it wouldn't make as much difference to me in terms of our district if at least we were all playing by the same rules. Have the same accountability for the use of the tax dollars. Okay? And I think that that's a fairly common opinion among educators. If we're going to do these things to help educate our kids, all of our kids, whatever, then let's at least have everybody have the same accountability and play by the same rules. Okay, so truth in taxation keeps the QTR relatively flat with no connection to cost of the education formula. So we don't really determine our tax rate. That's determined by a formula based on the assessed valuation in our district. So while I can say over the last 5 years our tax rate has gone down, it wasn't anything I could control. I mean, it's determined by the assessed valuation and a formula at the state level. And that's true for every district in the state, every public school district. Increases to anything in the equalization formula results in additional cost to the general fund. Okay? That's an important point. Increases in anything in the formula result in additional costs. Okay? So when when they anticipate or estimate what the state tax income is going to be so that the legislature can determine a budget, then it changes all of these formulas. Doesn't change the formulas, sorry. It changes the amounts, the numbers that go in the formulas. So if you recall, this current year, fiscal year 25, the anticipation was that state tax revenues would be less than last year. So when the Constitution says you can only spend this percentage of the state budget on education, if the state budget amount drops,
Then the amount.
then those dollars drop, okay? That's very logical, but I think it's one of the things we don't necessarily think about when we hear that the legislature is talking about the budget, is recognizing that whatever that budget does affects the amount of money that is in that maximum that can be spent for education in Arizona, okay? So let's say it's 48%. So if the Constitution says the maximum of the state budget that can be spent is 48%, okay? Every time this raises or lowers, that 48% raises or lowers, and then affects whatever it is we're doing in our calculations.
Carolyn, do states typically have a percentage that can only be spent for education?
I don't
Or is
really
that
know
unique to-
that. I just know that in Arizona, it's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not like the legislature can just decide, oh, this year, schools need X, Y, and Z, so we're going to increase that. It's dictated, okay? It's kind of like the AEL is dictated from a constitutional amendment that was made. Now, that piece of the Constitution at least has a safety valve that lets the legislature waive that on an annual basis. There are some proposals that say because the way that is written is based on 1980 dollars and a formula related to that, but there is an opportunity that the legislature could, without having a referendum of the public to change the Constitution or that amendment, could change what's used for that formula. That would mean that we would not have to calculate that every single year and get a waiver from the legislature every year. So each year, the alphabet groups encourage the legislature to look at this alternative way of calculating that, so we don't have to go through this every year. So we're hopeful that, as school districts, we're hopeful that the legislature will look at that, that change in how that's calculated, at what numbers are used to calculate that, tie it closer to the cost of living increases and those kinds of things, as opposed to a finite number that it is now, okay? Now, the DAA, which is that District Additional Assistance, which is for capital, the legislature has to determine that every year. And this past year, there was a struggle to get it approved, and there was some conversation that this current fiscal year, 25, would be the last time they would approve it. Now, of course, each legislature gets to decide, each session of the legislature gets to decide it, but it was in the conversations. So for us, that means that we would have to move whatever it is we are currently funding from DAA into our M&O. Okay? So right now, that's $1,015,000. No, $1,115,000. And if that went away, then that means for us to continue to do, to lease our Xerox machines, to consider purchasing a bus, to the 10 or 12 ongoing technology programs that we use, like Visions and Panorama and Synergy, all of those programs that help us function as a district are funded out of capital, okay? Because they're considered leases. We'd have to then to continue those, we would have to take a piece of our M&O budget and move it over to capital to continue those things, okay? So, of course, we're always, we're always encouraging our legislators to continue the DAA. Because for us, it would be pretty drastic. It would be a pretty drastic change.
That's a lot of toilet paper.
Well, and no, toilet paper supplies, yeah, but then we might not be able to buy as much toilet
That's what I'm
paper,
saying.
right?
That's a lot less.
Yes.
I should have said less toilet paper.
Yes,
I mean, or pencils or whatever, classroom supplies.
yes. And considering that, and in fact, I just calculated this today for something else that I'm working on. Okay, 57% of our budget, M&O budget, is salaries. Another 21% is benefits. So salaries and benefits represent 78% of our budget, okay? And
if we're
then,
talking
so then
$1
that
million.
leaves, okay, so that leaves 22%. We have fixed costs that we can't control, electricity and sewer and, and all of our utilities and our
Insurance.
disposal. No, insurance is in that benefits, it's in that 21%.
I was
But
thinking building insurance and stuff.
yes, you're absolutely right. Those are part of that 22% that we have left. Okay, repairs, any supplies that we use for repairs, any toilet paper, any cleaning supplies, any teacher supplies, any office supplies, okay? Or advertising, or, there's a whole laundry list of things that fall in that 22%. Travel expenses. But some of them we can't really control. We can't control what happens with utilities. We have to make sure we budget enough for the utilities, okay? So it ends up leaving only about between 5 and 8% of wiggle room there, okay? So then 5% of our $18 million budget, what goes away if we have to move that $1.1 million over to capital, okay? Not that we can't do it, we can. Those are the only two budgets where we can move money back and forth, okay? Those are the only two. And we could do it, but what goes away? Well, okay, I think we still need toilet paper and,
Yeah.
there are some
gonna say,
things
yeah,
like
we
that
do
that we
kinda
still
need
need.
that, yeah.
We still need cleaning supplies, we still need some of that. And so then it boils down to, okay, what do we do relative to salaries? Do we cut, do we cut the number of people? Because we still want to give raises every year. So somewhere some marbles in that jar get moved, okay? And I'm not complaining, I'm just talking facts of life here, all right, and what we have to consider. Okay, and so then you can see the other pressures that are on the legislature when they're talking about funding for schools. Okay? Okay. And you've asked really good questions, and I hope you don't ask any more difficult ones because I probably can't answer them, but I can certainly find out. Because I know that Annabelle was gracious enough to share all of these, share her slides and her research with all of us, so that we could share it with you and with anybody else who wants to know. So she would be very gracious about answering questions and helping us, and I'm sure she would be able to answer them.
Is the state doing anything about ESAs, about limiting? Because I'm sure that they've recognized this. Somewhere along the line, it's been pointed out to them, at least.
Well,
at
it
least
has been
media
pointed
has
out. But when an amount of money that's budgeted to the Arizona Department of Education, so that the state superintendent of public education can promote ESAs, it's doubtful that a whole, at this point, the outlook is that there's not, that there's not much of a move to put some restrictions and some accountability on this. The truth is that the folks who really want to promote the ESAs are not interested in having accountability.
Because they use the
Wait,
ESAs.
wait, wait, wait.
Because they use the
Save for their
ESAs.
family, yeah.
And some of
Wait.
those folks own schools that benefit from the ESAs.
But don't our rules come from the State Department of Education?
Well, from the State Board of Education
State Board,
through,
excuse me.
through them, but
Yeah.
only based on what the legislature passes as bills and as whatever. So they have to function within whatever laws the legislature passes. Okay? So besides helping you be informed, because I will tell you this was very informative to me. I could not have told you these things on my own because I haven't done that much research.
Just out of
But I will
curi-
tell you, it kind of guides me in what I want to be saying to our local representatives and senator about, please look at some of these things.
Does that mean that the little church schools that suddenly cropped up here in Bullhead
Yes,
are getting almost
Yes.
Yes.
$7,900
Yes.
per student?
yes. That's what it means. If their parents have enrolled them in those schools with ESAs, yes, that's exactly what they're
And they don't
getting.
have to follow any of the
No.
rules? The curriculum doesn't have to be followed?
Zero. They don't have to do
They
state
get more
testing.
money than we do.
Mhm.
They don't have to adhere to state standards.
Nope.
They don't have to, no.
No. That's why I'm saying, Melinda, that this would be an easier pill to swallow if we were playing by the same rules,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay.
And
All right.
as a passionate advocate of public school education, you can see why my opinion is very focused on this. And it is my opinion. It's my professional opinion. It's my personal opinion. As a parent, I would resent the fact that my neighbor's child could be going to school paid for with tax dollars and no accountability. So
It's
I can
not-
say it as a parent and I can say it as a professional.
It's not so much the tax dollars you resent, it's the fact that there's no accountability that
Yeah.
you resent.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
as a taxpayer,
Yeah.
okay, so Mark Scott, who is our facilities director, okay, came to us out of private industry, came to us as a former owner of a construction company and a developing, he owned the company. And so if costs were going up or there were expectations and rules and regulations for electrical installation and plumbing and all of that stuff, he could change his budget, change what he charged to accommodate that. And he didn't have to answer to anybody because he owned the company, okay? So when he came to work for us, it's a whole new ballgame. And he's been very nice about it and has learned a whole lot and is really on board at this time. But at the beginning, he's going, why can't you just X, Y, Z? And I said, because it's tax dollars. And taxpayers hold us accountable. They hold me accountable for having that budget that you're going to look at on Thursday. They hold me accountable for keeping that balanced, okay? And for us projecting down the road, Washington School District in Phoenix just determined last week that they're going to close 5 schools for next year, okay? And of course, that irritated a whole lot of parents and neighborhoods and whatever because they are neighborhood schools. But they are looking at a $5 million deficit in their budget. So they're trying, so they're planning so they don't have a $5 million deficit in their budget, okay? That would be like us looking at having $1 million somewhere in the range of $1 million deficit. Well, you're not going to let me present to you a budget that is $1 million in the red. And taxpayers don't want us to be functioning that way. They hold us accountable. So Fred, you're right, but part of me as a taxpayer says, wait a minute, I want to know as a taxpayer how my dollars are being spent and that somebody's checking on that to make sure that it's legitimate expenditures, okay? So it's a number of those factors that I kind of all group together with a let's play by the same rules, all right? Okay. So, I hope that's not too much of me pontificating, but I get pretty passionate about the fact that we do great things in public schools and try to do everything equitably so that every student that we serve has the opportunity to as good an education as we can provide. Okay, every kid, and that gets harder and harder when the dollars are not there. It gets harder and harder.
It's kind of off topic, but just curious. If you have like a private school that they don't have to test, they don't have to do all the things they don't have to follow the state standards, whatever. So they're not accredited, how do those students benefit from that to get into college? You know what I'm saying?
Or just to get into high school someplace.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Except some of them are high schools.
But
Now,
if you're
some of
talking
those
high school,
some of those-
and
yeah.
and it's a private school, so they don't have to test, they don't have to do any of those
Which-
things.
yeah,
They don't have to, they're not accredited.
Some of them are. Some
Some
of them have
are.
sought accreditation.
There are some.
To their
that are. I'm
credit,
working with
yes.
a student teacher right now. She's working at a private school. It is an accredited school,
Right.
and they do have to adhere to state standards. But there are some that don't. So I don't understand the parents' thinking, because if it's not accredited, how do they get into? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
'Cause
do.
Typically, that's a family that wants their child to go to Harvard or
Yes.
whatever. How do they get in if they're not going to a high school that's accredited?
I suspect that that's where some of the, like ACT and the SAT tests, SAT
I was
and
gonna say, there's a
ACT
lot of
and those
homeschool
testing might
people
help.
Yeah.
So they still have to take those?
They
Or
would
they
probably
don't have to, I guess, but. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, if they
unless
wanted
the
to.
university or the college requires it, and
Yeah.
most of them do. So, somehow they're going to have to demonstrate proficiency of,
yeah.
to get into
Yeah.
the college or the university, you would think.
Because it just logically
or
doesn't
even
make
a
sense to
trade
me.
It doesn't.
Or even a trade school.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
If you can't do the math, you can't get into a trade school.
that's right. That's
If you
right.
can't
So a
figure
trade
out
school's
dosages.
considered,
Still a
Charter?
college of, no, it's
No?
just it's another level of higher education. It's post-secondary. And
I'm
trade schools are not
sure-
going to let you in without some kind of evidence of what it is you're capable of doing.
Right.
I'm sure that if you're going to a carpentry trade school, that they're
Yeah.
going to make sure that you know how to use a ruler.
well,
Yeah, so,
one would hope that, yes. Although I've
otherwise-
had some construction done that, not sure they did.
Okay, maybe we should move on.
And thank you for the extra time to do that. But I really felt that this was valuable information, if nothing else, background information for you.
For next,
Yeah.
for
And
Thursday.
also, I don't like to be completely unable to, could I expound on this a lot? No. I'm depending on Annabella's research, and she's clearly taken the time to do it. So, I'm not going to go out and expound on it to lots of people, but I appreciate the fact that I can now at least answer some questions. If a community member or a parent comes in and says, that they say in the news that you have X dollars to, per student. And I can say, well, not really, or yes, you're right, or no, we actually have a little more than that. But at least I can be a little bit intelligent in my ability to respond to people. And then honest enough to say, I don't know the answer to some of it, but I'll find out for you. And you all get asked questions. Melinda's mentioned something to me before we started tonight that somebody in the community had asked her. So, we want to at least be able to respond intelligently to people. Okay? So, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the workshop?
I make a motion, we adjourn the workshop?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? I'm Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I, Barb Zarzicki.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting for Bullhead City School Board on Monday, December 9th, 2024, at 6:24. Roll call. I present Melinda Sabrowski.
Charlene Diaz here.
Fred Rushton here.
Barb Zarzicki here.
And I don't see, oh, we're going to say the pledge, yeah. Ready? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I always forget where that comment is.
There is no.
Well, that's what, yeah, okay. All citizens present, I don't see any, so I'm just going to skip that. Call the public, I'm going to skip that because we don't have any of that. Adoption of the agenda.
How about donations?
We got donations.
Donations, oh yeah, I was looking at that. Can we bring that, oh yeah. What was the one that I was looking at? Fiestival, there you go. Ellie and Mitchell Ziegler of Fiestival Center and Museum selected Valerie Delgadillo. Yeah, huh? As one of the 500. What is her?
She's a teacher at Sunrise. We actually have teachers at Desert Valley. Oh gosh, now I can't remember. We have teachers. I think we have 4 teachers who got the $2,500 Fiestival.
Really, what do they do? What are they doing with the 2,400?
Different things. They're doing things for their classrooms. So I know one of the teachers is increasing the classroom library and materials. Another teacher is creating kind of a reading nook in the classroom, and so some bean bags that meet fire standards and some carpets to designate an area for that, because keep in mind we removed carpet wall to wall from classrooms, so it's kind of nice to designate an area in the classroom. I looked at part of Valerie's list today, and she was looking for some bookshelves and some storage units for her kindergarten classroom, because you have lots of things in kindergarten classrooms. So a variety of things that they're doing for their classrooms, but
So
it's
did
very
they
nice.
Did she just write for it, or what did she do?
They did, and then it's just a random drawing.
Oh,
It's a random drawing of all the people who who put in, and then it comes through Donors Choose. So Fiestival Charities sets it up with Donors Choose, and they send their orders through there. So it's very nice.
it is. That doesn't mean that the shrine and
Oh no, everything
all
is
the rest of these guys on
appreciated.
here are not appreciated. It's just that I was really astounded by $2,500.
Right. There were there are 500 recipients in the state each year from Fiestival. So, so not only does Fiestival do cool things for a couple of colleges or universities to come and play and bring their folks, and does things for tourism in Arizona, but there's also the give back to Arizona schools, which is wonderful.
Wonderful. I appreciate it.
Every donation is appreciated.
Any other comments on donations? Okay. Now we get to adopt the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Second it.
All those in favor? I'm Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I, Barb Zarzicki.
Okay. Superintendent. Can we go down to the 5-year comparison? The last one? Malk has been around a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot longer on this side.
Right. I think what we're seeing from, particularly last year and this year, are a couple of new charter schools. The
Private schools.
the private schools, sorry, not
Yeah.
charters, the private schools. Well, and also effect of one of the charter schools, Desert Star added a high school this year, added freshman and sophomore of their high school. And in a few cases, the parents of students who the parents chose for the students to go there, the high school students, then it made some sense, I'm sure, for those families to take their elementary students there as well. So I'm sure we lost a few there. But the other thing is right now, in Arizona, part of the issue is the drop in the birth rate. And so we're being affected by that as much as anybody. So, there's not one single cause for this drop.
But in 4 years, we've
Yes.
lost 400 students.
300.
300,
Okay, 300.
300 students, yeah.
Students.
And over the course of time with, over the last few years, probably the last 10 years, we've lost 900.
Well, and think of the economy, because a
Yeah.
lot of people,
Moving out.
even when I was still working, the parents were leaving with their children to go back to live with other family members.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, created a lot of movement in the population too.
I find it very interesting that 2021 was the full year of COVID.
Right.
And that 21-22 that our numbers went back up, and which was nice, but I don't know quite why that happened.
Probably because parents were excited to get them back.
Maybe, I think maybe that was part of it, although we had kids in school all year on 23, or in 2021, although a third of our kids were at home and virtual, but they were still enrolled in our schools. But I also think we had some folks who were, moving in, multiple families in households because of the after effects of COVID and whatever. But yeah, the drop since then. But there's not one cause. There are multiple reasons. If you have questions about any of the other charts or tables, I'll try to answer those. I only have one item for an update. The auditors were here the week before Thanksgiving, and that full week before. They were done on Wednesday afternoon. I've never, in the 5 years, fifth time of doing this, for them to be done in 3 days was amazing. Literally, they were done, and we did exit report on Wednesday afternoon before they left. We usually do exit report on Friday morning, and so that was pretty amazing. It was a clean audit, and we had 10 minor little, fix these things, some of which were fixed before. One item of which, because of course it was the audit for fiscal year '24, one of the items that they reported to us, we'd already fixed for this year, so it was fixed before they even saw the data and stuff. But we've already worked on everything else, so those items will be cleared for next year. So it was a clean audit, and it was good.
Kind of nice to hear.
Very nice to hear.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
And you will get the formal audit report when the written one comes, and it will be on on the agenda, so you can see all of the information, including the 10 items that they want us to work on, so.
Does anybody need to see anything, any of those reports? Anybody? Okay.
Not today.
Moving on then to 2.9, board member updates. Has anybody been in the schools?
Not since last month.
This is a good one for you, Fred. I was talking to the guy from IE or EI.
Kevin.
Kevin. He says that we need to be up at sunrise talking to our third grade teachers, because they have shown some real enthusiasm, not necessarily improvement, but enthusiasm to at least looking at improvement and, well, actually doing some improvement. So, because that was one of the schools that you really liked going to, wasn't it?
I like going to them all,
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was,
but I was impressed by the Sunrise campus.
yeah.
And
But you might want to go up there and, because he basically, what was I doing? I was over at Desert Valley. Well, we were going to give stuffed Santa Clauses to people who were, the kinders who were caught being kind. And he caught me in the parking lot, so, and I thought of Fred at that time.
Uh-oh, your phone's ringing.
Excuse me. I'm never good at this. There we go.
Can't figure out your.
Sorry, I apologize for that. But anyway, Fred, third grade.
And Kevin was mentioning the third grade teacher's enthusiasm about
About,
the EI stuff.
yeah, about improving. He didn't say that they had reached any kind of specific level,
Right,
but that they basically were,
attitude more than results.
yeah. And I thought,
You got to start there.
We gotta
Yeah.
start somewhere.
Gotta
so,
start somewhere.
and I
Gotta
was
be
really,
enthusiastic.
I was really
Yeah.
happy that he stopped me and he said, he was talking about this with usual Kevin enthusiasm. You know, sometimes I'll swear that he takes pills for that. But he does, you know, he was very enthusiastic. And I did think of you, Fred, because
Okay,
you had talked about Sunrise.
thank you.
Item 3, consent agenda. Anything on the consent agenda you guys want to talk about that we need to pull? Or can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I, Barb Zarzicki.
And there is no old business, so we're going to move right on to new business. And Wells Fargo, this is the same thing, right?
We do this
Every year?
annually.
Yeah.
This is just to give us a financial cushion in case, for any reason, the state does not deposit for us the monthly dollars. We've not had to draw on this at all since I've been in this position, but it's always nice to have a parachute.
Is 7.75%, is that a pretty good?
I think that's typical, yeah,
That's
right now, yeah.
Okay.
And frankly, I don't pay much attention to it because,
Because
as
we
I
don't
said,
use
we've
it.
not had to use it. But as I said, it's nice to have a parachute.
Do I have a motion to approve the establishment of a credit line with Wells Fargo for school year, or fiscal year 25?
I make a motion, we approve the line of credit with Wells Fargo for the fiscal year 25.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I, Barb Zarzicki.
Property donation. Now, this was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cass, would you put up there you go, thank you so much. So,
There's a better map of this.
yeah,
though.
there's a better map on the next page.
There you
So,
Oh, there we go.
yeah, you might want to bring it down a little bit now. There you go. The Realtor contacted Cass and asked her about this, and of course she asked me, and I said, well, I think we need this on the board agenda. You can see it's immediately adjacent to the football field at Fox Creek. The elevation is a little lower than the football field, but certainly not as low as down in that wash. So it's not at risk of flooding or, any of those kinds of things. It is rather an odd-shaped parcel.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of understandable why they were having, they've sold some other parcels along the parkway for businesses and whatever. But one of the advantages for us is not, is that if we have it as part of our property, then there's not a chance of something being built there, some business being built there, which becomes kind of an attractive nuisance for our students.
You mean like
Yeah.
as in another Circle K?
Yeah. Yes.
Is it something that's usable? Or,
I think it would be. I don't know, I don't have any ideas right offhand what we might use it for. But yeah, I think it would be, it's,
Even it just as a buffer zone,
Yeah, just
if it's
even
being
buffer.
donated and stuff.
yeah. I mean, you can kind of tell from this aerial view that there's some changes in elevation there.
Yeah.
And they're pretty pronounced, too.
They are when you drive by and look at it. But, we don't know. Well, who knows? We might end up with some great idea of what to do with that little piece of property.
Is it going to increase property taxes? Or
No.
anything like that?
Doesn't change property taxes. We don't
Doesn't
pay
change anything
taxes
at
on
all?
our property, and, we don't pay property taxes on any of our properties. And at this point, it's not going to increase our
Value.
insurance rates or any of those things, because there's nothing on there right now to be insured.
That's probably going to be a real tax advantage for the donators. or the
Well, and I think so
people that-
too.
Yeah.
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 And certainly no harm, no foul to anybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Right.
Win-win.
So it's one of those where I kind of go, well, don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Mouse. Exactly.
It's not something that,
It is very
There's no
oddly
cons on
shaped.
it.
It is kind of a funny shape, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes me kind of wonder why originally our property
Wasn't.
didn't include that to begin with,
Yeah.
But I have no idea. I mean, that's
ancient history.
25 years ago,
Yeah.
so I have no idea.
Do I have a motion to accept this donation?
I make a motion that we accept the property donation from Avalon Realty LLC for the parcel of land adjacent to the southeast corner of the football field at Fox Creek Junior High.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I'm Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I, Barb Zarzicki.
Okay.
Cass, would you put that regulation up, please?
When I read this, I didn't see anything weird with it.
Yeah, I skimmed it.
It's very long.
It is.
Yeah.
But
And
I was
and it's our
looking for-
current regulation. The changes are at the very end.
I didn't notice any difference in type or color or anything.
I'm
I
sorry, I
didn't
had a long
either.
weekend.
It's underlined, but it's,
There it is.
okay, so
Oh,
one of the
okay.
things are the blue things, which are the references to regulations. They're not laws, they're administrative code regulations. And many of them have to do with graduation, which does not affect us at all.
Yeah.
Cass, if you scroll back up just a hair, okay, whoop. Okay, establish, implement, and make available to its personnel and parents written procedures regarding access to special ed. We do that already. I think mostly this is just to reference some new things that were put in the administrative regulations. And you can see the multiple references there. And then, whoops, there's one. Okay, and again,
That's
it's graduation,
graduation.
so it doesn't really affect
Yeah.
us.
When I saw this, I didn't see.
And these all have to do with things for special ed students.
Yeah.
So it very much defines school
16th
districts'
grade.
responsibilities for continued education and a plan for students, services to students beyond the age of 16. So. These changes really do not affect anything that we would do differently at elementary.
Do I have a motion to adopt? Regulation IHB-R, Special Education, Special Instructional Programs. Do I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion that we adopt Regulation IHB-R, Special Instructional Programs.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I,
Fred Rushton.
Barb Zarzicki.
Okay, item 5.4, going into executive session. Do I have a motion to move to executive session? I'm
You gotta
sorry.
read
You
all
have
of
to
them.
read that whole thing that you love.
What happened to your?
I have to read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're right, I don't like this. Item 5.4, convene into executive session pursuant to ARS 38431.03A1. Discussion or consideration of employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, dismissal of salaries, disciplining, or resignation of a public officer, appointee, or employee of any public body, except that, with the exception of salary discussions, an officer, appointee, or employee may demand that the discussion or consideration occur in public meeting. Did the person want a public meeting?
No.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to convene?
I'll make a motion that we convene to executive session.
I second it.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
Fred Rushton.
We are in
Hey,
executive
Barb
session.
Zarzicki. I'm sorry, I had a mouthful of lemonade.
a motion to reconvene into public session?
Make a motion that we reconvene into public session.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I'm Barbara Zarzaki.
Item 7.2, establishing the sorry, Carolyn, superintendent's performance goals. Do I have a motion or anything?
I make a motion, we table 7.2 until our special meeting on Thursday, December 12th at 10 a.m.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? I, Melinda Sabrowski.
I, Charlene Diaz.
I, Fred Rushton.
I'm Barbara Zarzaki.
Done with that. Closing items. 8.1, future topics. Was there anything that we would like to just have discussed? Barb and I have decided not to go to annual conference,
Yeah.
so we are not going.
We're not going. It's
To
4
pre-
days before Christmas, and it's like,
Oh.
because it's the 19th,
Oh,
and it's like,
It's just an ugly
it
time
just
to go
didn't work
down.
out right for being too close to Christmas, so.
yeah.
And with everything else at this time of the year, we've opted not to this year.
Item 8.2, upcoming board events. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Desert Valley Holiday Show, that's what I want. 18th at 5:30. Is anybody else planning on going to that?
What's that?
The Wednesday 18th?
Yeah. For the, I will be.
Lance, even if two of us are there, you might want to put out a notice that we may have a quorum.
I can do that. We've also got blanket.
Oh, okay. I just want you to, just want us to be,
Thank you.
Yeah.
um,
Gotta go support our choir members.
yeah. Just 5:30. I think that would be kind of cool to see.
Yeah. Here's some more.
That's the only one I see on here. Are there any of the other schools having, is junior high having one?
Tomorrow, Sunrise has a couple.
Sunrise concerts tomorrow
Um,
at 5:30. Oh, I could go at those. No, I can't.
No, we,
Not tomorrow.
not tomorrow.
Maybe Wednesday.
Maybe the Wednesday one.
Tomorrow we got VOR.
So 12/11 at 5:30 at Sunrise.
And you may want to set your January meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Not wait till
Yeah, we will.
Thursday to do
Is it,
January meeting, is that what you're
it.
saying?
Yeah, the regular meeting date and
The
time would
9th.
be the 9th.
I don't have any trouble with the 9th.
I'm okay with that.
let me check real quick. Come on, phone. Works for me.
January 9th. That works
Mhm.
for me.
Yeah.
That will be the night that you will That will be the night that you consider anybody who's interested in
School board.
Oh,
school board
open
vacancy.
seat.
Mhm.
When does the Science Olympiad happen? Is that,
We're not doing Science Olympiad this year. We had no sponsors.
Mm. It's too bad.
those kids were inspired.
Yes.
Same.
Is that an after-school program?
Mhm.
And they should have been working on it all year long. Okay. I was going to say, oh, man. I wish I'd known that because I probably would have volunteered to do that. Okay,
We'll keep that in mind for next year.
okay. So we're going to go for January 9th, and we're going to start with a workshop at 5:30 and have a regular meeting soon after that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Well, let's remind everybody that we have a meeting on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. to discuss the budget revisions and to take care of our tabled item. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? I'm Melinda Sabrowski.
Charlene Diaz.
By Fred Rushton.
I,
Meeting
Barb
is-
Zarzicki.
Meeting is now adjourned.